watch you smile while you are sleeping, while you're far away and dreaming. I could spend my life in this sweet surrender. I could stay lost in this moment forever. Every moment spent with you is a moment I treasure. Don't wanna close my eyes, I don't wanna fall asleep, 'cause I miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. 'Cause even when I dream of you, the sweetest dream would never do. I'd still miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. Lying close to you, feeling your heart beating, and I'm wondering what you're dreaming, wondering if it's me you're seeing. When I kiss your eyes and thank God we're together, and I just wanna stay with you in this moment forever, forever and ever. I don't wanna close my eyes, I don't wanna fall asleep, 'cause I miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. 'Cause even when I dream of you, the sweetest dream would never do. I'd still miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. I don't wanna miss one smile, I don't wanna miss one kiss. I just wanna put you right here with me, just like this. I just wanna hold you close. I feel your heart so close to mine, and just stay here in this moment for the rest of time. Close my eyes, don't wanna fall asleep, 'cause I miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. 'Cause even when I dream of you, the sweetest dream would never do. I still miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. I don't wanna close my eyes, I don't wanna fall asleep, 'cause I miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. 'Cause even when I dream of you, the sweetest dream would never do. I still miss you, baby, and I don't wanna miss a thing. Don't wanna close my eyes, don't wanna fall asleep, I don't wanna miss a thing.
Hey, welcome to Academy of Tone 242. And yeah, it's the first episode of 2025. Happy New Year to all of you. I hope you have seen some of our chart shows that we have produced, and you could see over the holidays between Christmas and New Year. Maybe you can hear my voice. I have a little rough throat coming from some cold. After the last gigs of the year, I lost everything. I lost my voice. I remember the last gig, my backing vocals were kind of disappearing, and it was funny. It was actually really, really funny. But I really enjoyed it, and I feel fine, just a bit weird with my voice. So no worries, guys, all good. Yeah, talking about the new year, there's a lot of things coming up. There's the NAMM show coming up. This episode will introduce Emanuel Knorr at the very end of this episode, who is a friend of mine, fantastic guitar player. He will do some Academy of Tone later on this year, maybe in February. We have a longer interview for the end of this episode with him. Interesting guy, interesting story. Will widen up the topics that we will do at the Academy of Tone. But before we dive into serious stuff, let me show that little clip with my Rockanarchie colleagues having a beer after one of the last gigs. I found this funny, so you should see that. Enjoy Gully, and at the very end, Tommy Fischer, our drummer, and the two of us having a beer. So this was a fantastic gig with the Rockanarchie.
Real great
Okay.
audience and
Hey.
great beer.
Cheers, Gully.
Cheers. Getting smaller. It's just that small.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Yeah, well, Happy New Year. For the topic of today, I was inspired by a couple of videos that just have been on YouTube recently, and it's a cumulation of that pedal show. Mick Taylor and Daniel Steinhardt, they were raving about the Rotosphere. And then there was Michael Nielsen from LA raving about the Tubeman. And then there was another guy, I don't know his name, his channel is Aeon Electronics, a German guy, who had a deep dive into the Tubeman. I found all these videos very interesting. We will watch some snippets of that. But that brought up the idea of, you know what, guys? It's what have I done in my life designing products? And what are the products that could stand the test of time, that are still around and maybe sought after? And there's a few products that I designed that nobody talks anymore, and they're dirt cheap, and nobody wants them anymore. But those products that are still sought after today, they have certain qualities. And these qualities I always had in mind, even back 30 years ago, when I was designing products also with Houston Kettner. I mean, this is where we can see some of the products. And let me start chronologically with the Tubeman Mark 1. So this little bad boy here, or pedal here, which has been reviewed by Michael Nielsen just recently as being Nuno Bettencourt's secret weapon. I'm not sure which record it was. You have to watch his video on that. It is a video where he explained how Nuno was getting his killer sound with this thing in combination with a clean Fender amp. So he used the Tubeman as a preamp into a Fender amp, and that is some iconic tone. Watch Michael Nielsen's video. Maybe we watch that first, okay? So this was my inspiration on the Tubeman. and it's a musical inspiration. And then see how, yeah, what he is doing with this piece of gear that I came up in 1992 or 91. I have everything here, but we dive into the details. First, watch that clip of Michael Nielsen.
Now, the real out there thing for this album is that all of the distortion outside of maybe cranking the Fender, but it doesn't sound like a cranked Fender for the more like hard rock and stuff, was coming from a classic old Hughes and Kettner Tubeman. Now, this is a fantastic pedal. I would say maybe ahead of its time. I got this in college for a couple of reasons. One is I had a dual rectifier at the time, and I was not going for that dual rectifier sound. So I think I knew that Nuno had used this, and I was like, well, that's great. I could kind of afford this. I can't afford anything else that he used. So I ran this into the effects loop of my dual rectifier, and it transformed the dual rectifier. Same goes here, but this also has, look at these outputs. You've got to mixer, to power amp, to guitar amp. So you could run it direct to your mixer. This is before Line 6 Pod, so this is a revelation. The designer was a genius. Let's say he is a genius. You know this guy? That's Thomas Blug from Blue Guitar. He is a genius. He is the man behind the Tubeman, the Hughes and Kettner Rotosphere, and then all the other Blue Guitar stuff. So it's really a fantastic product. You could run it out like a standard distortion pedal, but it has a tube in it, so it's like tube great. It's a preamp. You could run it into a power amp like I was doing with the dual rectifier, or you could go straight to your mixer running direct. I would also run bass through this, and it sounded awesome. So I highly recommend these. I think you could get them online. Well, they changed the form factor at some point, and now I don't think they make it. But you could get a rack version. You could get the newer version that has multiple channels. This one is in the 100 to 200 range, and it's great. It's still great. The bummer is it uses a specific power supply, 12 volt AC. So it's not like easily powered, and if you lose the power supply, I actually almost threw this away because I'd lost the power supply for ages and I thought it was broken because I couldn't find any of the right power supplies. The other thing, I had totally forgotten about this until I went online looking for the manual. The manual is not a manual. It was a spiral pushover layover thing, a book that went on top of the Tubeman with holes in it, so the knobs will go through. And then you would turn the page and go, hey, preset 1, you just turn the knobs, turn the page, preset 2. I'm gonna do a full demo on this Tubeman later because it's got a lot of tones. It's super great. I did some Tone-X captures of it. As well, I'm doing Tone-X captures of the sounds I was using here. So that'll be a whole Tubeman punchline pack. But let's check this out. Okay, same rig. Here's my basement setting. And I'm in the rock setting, the most gain available here. And it's pretty neutral, but it just sounds awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, so if you want to see all the details on Nuno's sound, you have to watch Michael Nielsen's full video. By the way, we have a little photo of myself and Nuno when I met him at some NAMM show with his daughter. He was playing a Hughes and Kettner Triumph Mark. The Triumph Mark 1, from what I remember, mainly on the last channel. like Triumph has 6 channels, and he was not using too much gain, but he liked that tight and yeah, tight and aggressive tone. And by the way, you know, Michael Nielsen was raving about this spiral extra overlay kind of thing, which I still love, because I've done the same thing for the Amp1s. So see, this is the same thing, and it fits on top of the Amp1s. And then there are some settings. There are other settings on the other side, and there is even more pages for more sounds. And we have that overlay, so to speak, for Iridium edition, and of course for the Mercury edition. Talking about, well, you can get those from our website. Before I forget, there's 2 things that are new at Blue Guitar, product-wise, that will come up very soon. I mean, we are approaching NAMM, and this is where we officially will launch the whole thing. But I used the live stream already. Some people might know that I have done this Neo Pro cabinet, Nanocab. And this Nanocab Neo Pro is so lightweight, and it has a full 100-watt neodymium speaker. The first neodymium speaker I'm happy with. It took me years to get that speaker done. I think it's incarnation number 7 or something like that. And it's scary loud. I mean, just for physics, it's a 12-inch speaker, and I don't think you get much more volume out of such a small cabinet. And on the other hand, it's so lightweight, and that's the thing about the new Nanocab Neo Pro. And the other thing, we have shown you a little bit before Christmas, was a blue version of the Amp1 Mercury edition, and these are now they can be ordered from our website. I mean, talking about all the Europeans, and for the Americans, if you don't have one, send us an email if you want one of those. It's a classic Mercury, nothing special, just the color is different. It's a cool color. It's this petroleum kind of blue color, and we are planning to make a production run and throw in a few of those. So if you want one of those, let us know, either by going straight to our online shop on the website, or for the Americans, sending us an email, so we can place the order and make sure you get one March, April or so. It will take some time, of course, but we had done a few ourselves, but they were flying out like, yeah, they just disappeared too fast. And therefore we decided to make a few more, depending on how many you guys want. Okay, so that's the thing that is new with Blue Guitar and the store. But now let's go back for the Tubeman Mark 1. When I came up with the idea for the Tubeman Mark 1, I had a very simple layout that is, maybe we can see this here. Oh fuck, it's reflecting like crazy. See this? Oh, wait a minute, this side. No, this side. So this, let's see this. This is the Tubeman cosmetics, and this is the Tubeman, how it looks like. I show you. It's pretty much the same thing. Exactly this layout. Okay, that's the internal. This is how we have that 12 volt AC. We have the tube. We have the bypass switch, the speaker emulation, and this is a block diagram how the whole thing works. And then the whole Tubeman concept was so new that we decided to get a patent for it. So this is the patent with a proper patent number with a few names on it. One is Bernd Schneider, who is the technician that I worked with back in the days at Hughes & Kettner. That's my name, Thomas Blug. And there is the boss of Hughes & Kettner, Hans Stamer. So we three shared a patent for a device that is that size, that uses a tube and has a certain a certain kind of feature set and technology behind it. And here's my point. It was way ahead of its time, and I found a video just the other day by Aeon Electronics. I actually would like to know his real name. I couldn't find it anyway. But this video, he was reviewing the Tubeman, and he was explaining why he kind of finds the Tubeman Mark 1 that he had so innovative. Let's watch that little video and then I give you my 2 cents about it.
Hello and welcome back. In this episode it's all about the Hughes & Kettner tube preamp made in the early 90s. Since there's a lot to cover in this episode, feel free to jump to the part of your interest. So in part 1 I'll talk about the history of the Tubeman, and we take a look at the patent, which hopefully unveils all the tonal and innovative secrets. For those who only came for the sound, no problem, part 2 is for you. But if you ever thought about modifying your device, in part 3 I will do exactly that and compare it to my stock one. And if you know me, I don't stop here. Since this channel is about electronics, I've rebuilt the rock channel of this preamp and designed a PCB. So you can build your very own, well, at least a part of it, the rock channel. So this final part is meant as a small bonus, and you can download the Gerber files down below. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's talk about the historical context. The Tubeman was designed as a portable preamp. It has a new patented circuit with a single 12AX7 and 4 channels in a box. But what else was available back then, and is this concept really new for its time? To really answer this question, we should have a look at the market around the early 90s. A few years ago I built a clone of the Chandler tube driver. The original device was used by Eric Johnson and Joe Satriani, for example, and was made around 1987. So the concept of a tube pedal is new at all, but the tube driver only has a low anode voltage of around 12 volts, and I wasn't really happy with it. The Hughes & Kettner Tubeman instead has real high voltage on its anodes, which is around 280 volts. The next real tube pedal with a fairly high anode voltage, at least I can think of, is the Soldano Supercharger GTO, I think, which was released around the year 2000. But if you're aware of any pedal which was released earlier and has a fairly high anode voltage, write it in the comments down below. That would be really interesting for me. So what's the conclusion of the article about the Tubeman? It says it is positive that it has got 4 channels, an authentic tube sound, effective tone stack, 3 different outputs, it is compact, and its bypass function, and a good speaker emulation. Here is written simulation. I really don't get it. Why do so many people confuse these 2 words? And the only negative point is the lack of the strain relief for the power cord. Yes, that's true, since the connector is not really that tight. Finally, there's a thing I'm always interested in. The price you had to pay for this preamp back then. Of course, adjusted for inflation. So let's have a look. Okay, let's see. 590 German Mark equals $361 in 1992. Now inflation. So first the year, 1992. And 361 equals, whoa, 800 US dollars. Okay, before we check out whether I come to the same conclusion regarding the tonal aspects, we should take a look at the patent, which disclosed in 1994. There it is. This is a patent you can find online, but I will only focus on a few claimed advantages of the invention, since in the patent the whole circuit is explained in full detail. It states that it is an advantage that no additional tube stage is necessary for the respective channels, in contrast to other preamps where every channel has its own tubes. Therefore, this reduces costs and increases repairability, and by using additional non-amplifying distortion stages that produce overtones, on the one hand tube stages are saved, and on the other, these distortion stages can be integrated into the signal path by using a simple switch. Okay, but what is meant with non-amplifying distortion stages? That's pretty simple. Let's have a look at the schematic. We see D1, D2 and B1. Those are diodes and they are just clipping the signal instead of amplifying it. And that's also a form of distortion. To achieve a clean or crunchy blues sound, the additional amplification stages are switched out of the signal path so that they have no influence on the frequency spectrum of the amplifier output signal. If we look at the schematic, we can see that either IC1B is active in case of the rock channel, or IC2A is active in case of all other channels. The treble and mid control is passive and the bass control is active. This prevents muddiness, which can occur if there's too much bass present before the distortion. With that configuration, one can increase or decrease the bass after all the distortion is happening. And yes, there's a lot more to mention at this point, but this would take many hours, so I focus on the important things. Essential for the Tubeman is that it has a real high voltage on the anodes of the tubes. Intelligent switching of the amplifier stages prior to the tube stages. This way the tubes can do most of the work. Plus, there's a lot of clever filtering going on. Even the gain potentiometer has a passive filter network. And of course the overall tone shaping via high and low pass filter elements. And if you wonder how much the diode clipping influences the sound, I can tell you that it actually softens the distortion a little bit. I know some people are always complaining, yeah, but is it a tube amp with all those ICs and diodes? And my answer would be yes, of course. With this type of circuit design, the tubes do the most work. But hear for yourself.
Well, so you could see what other people think of the Tubeman Mark 1. There was a Tubeman Mark 2 follow-up with like 3 channels, foot switchable and a little bit more controls. It's probably a little bit more practical in the live use, but honestly, I personally prefer the Mark 1 version. As being a tone nerd, I believe I nailed the frequencies, my holy grail frequencies, even back then. And this is also kind of approved by another tone connoisseur from Germany, Udo Pipper, who wrote a lot of articles on Gitarre and Bass magazine. He has his own, here we can have a little picture of him. He builds his own amps as well. Very, very traditional tone, but you know, at highest level. I love the way he makes good tone. And he works on guitars and on amps just to improve tone. And for him, the only overdrive pedal that he accepts is that Tubeman Mark 1. And let me show you what I heard from Udo. So Udo is also a fan of the Marshall JTM 45, and just behind me there is my all original JTM 45 from 1965, and this is what it sounds like. So it's a super warm sounding tube amp. And the thing is, this thing doesn't have any master volume. So when you want to get overdrive, you have to crank it. So I'm in the high treble input. I put it now on 7 or 8. Or on 10. Okay, guys, this is a Marshall on 10. And then we can work with the volume control on the guitar. So let's put it back to 4, where it's still clean. And engage the Tubeman Mark 1, but now on the blues channel. That's bypass. I think it's very, very similar. And now, why do I believe that kind of Tubeman is still sought after with a few guys? Well, because it has the tone. For me, tone was always so important. That's why blue guitar is called tone innovation. And when we think back of why is this a pedal, it's very simple, because I wanted to have that tone, but always with me. I wanted to have that in my guitar case. This Tubeman Mark 1 is designed to fit into a vintage Stratocaster case. It fits in the compartment. Check it out. That's why this Tubeman has exactly that size. And back then I was traveling with that, and I did a lot of session work, me being young and beautiful, and my guitar was also young and beautiful and way cleaner. And I worked in studios. Wait a minute, where can we see? Like, this is the studio of Frank Farian, producer of Bonnie M, Milli Vanilli, and them all. And so I have had a lot of work in studios, also internationally. I was flying to London a couple of times, and I didn't want to hire amps or use whatever, so I brought this Tubeman with me and was plugging in this pedal into anything available, and that gave me 4 different sounds already. So this was my concept. And on the other hand, it takes a concept, it takes the sound, and it needs to be something unique that you cannot find in the market from anybody else at the level where you can be the first for at least a certain period of time to become an original. And now looking back at my past, creating such devices, I can see such kind of originals, and I can see a few products that nobody talks about anymore. So the thing is, you have to become the leader in a certain category of products. And therefore you have to create something new. You have to do something unique and something special. And this goes into even technical layers. When you look at the schematics of such a Tubeman, the basic idea always was to make the best use out of one tube in combination with other components. And as you can see in the patent and in the explanation of the patent, it was using the tube as the central element in the circuitry, and using diodes and other means of clipping to add sometimes to a certain extent, and making something like gain staging, having several stages of gain and adding them. That's something that happens in tube amps. That's happening when you have pedals and you stack them together. And that's something, even back then, I was using this kind of technology or philosophy. Let's call it a philosophy, because if you design each channel with its own 100% separate circuitry, you end up with devices that are way too big, way too expensive, that have way too many parts, and that never make a good product, I believe. I mean, as long as you have only one sound, that's easy. But on the other hand, if you have in mind to have a certain variety of sounds, several channels and stuff like that, it's better to understand the core of the tone plus what you have to add to it to get the flexibility. And that's the concept. I see a question here in the chat. Did Thomas create the Cream Machine too? No, this was Jürgen Rath, and he sadly passed away too. One of the students in my students' living room where I live was thinking about getting one, maybe expensive too. I don't know about the tube prices, but I designed all the other sound machines after this. Jürgen was also a killer engineer, Rath amps, maybe you have heard of them. And Jürgen was also part of the Jusen Kettner team in the early days. He wasn't there for that long as I was. I was there for 27 years, but I remember like the first 4 or 5 years we also worked together. And Jürgen, we shared a lot of common ideas of how important it is to have a preamp gain and a power amp gain. And this was the trick with the sound machines, where we have, especially like the Cream Machine, Giffy is writing in the chat, is that you have gain coming from this preamp stage and gain having a gain stage in the power amp section as well, which also makes overdrive, and cascading gain stages make that creamy tone. This is where the name Cream Machine comes from. I was the sound designer of the Crunch Master, the Metal Shredder or Metal Master. Together with Peter Sonntag, we did the Bass Master, kind of a whole series, and take on classic sounds just in half 19-inch rack format. And these were the days where people had rack systems, and they had all the flexibility and the switching systems. And then if they wanted to have a really good sound, we gave them the sound with a preamp and power amp in a rack that could be dialed in, or even the Tubeman as a 19-inch rack mount with several channels. So what I'm trying to say here is it requires a certain mindset to get the innovation going. And then you do whatever you believe is the best you can do, doing a product, and of course you do all the kind of marketing you can do. Things like here we can see here, that's me again in the studio, and on the other side we can see Larry Mitchell, who was using the rack mount version back then. So this is, and here we can see this is the Tubeman on top of that Fender. I think it is my Super Reverb. Yeah, it's my Super Reverb. I had this even back then, 64 Super Reverb. And guess what? We just learned earlier in this episode, a Fender amp and a Tubeman makes a great sound because Nuno Bettencourt was using it. So you can't go wrong if Nuno is using that. But let's go back for what does it take to create a classic amp. I think it takes that clear vision. It takes that unique approach in maybe form factor or sound factor. It needs to be different from what else is being done. And you need to be like the first doing that. And you have to go all the way to make it sound good. Otherwise, it will simply die. And, it's like my 61 Strat. I still play that fucking Strat. Why? Because it's still the best Stratocaster in the house. And, once you achieved a great tone with an instrument or with an amp or with a pedal, then why should you change it? I mean, I know what's good, and that's why this is a keeper. This guitar is a keeper. And with that kind of mindset, I think a keeper makes stuff timeless. If it's having such a great tone, it will not be obsolete in a couple of years because the tone is everlasting. With this guitar built in 1961, or with this Tubeman built in 1992 probably, or with an Amp1 built whatever, last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I started the company. These products I tried to max out to achieve that top level, and on that top level it's just a matter of taste if you prefer whatever, this sound of a Mercury or of an Iridium or whatnot. And that's your personal choice and your personal preference, but it's not like, oh, something is missing. It's just a taste thing that might be missing for you, but it's not a quality thing missing. And that's something I had a lot of arguments with people in the past. It's like, well, this is not a tube amp and it's a tube pedal and there's solid state components in the signal path and this is why it sounds shit. Yes and no. I mean, for me this is a shortcut when you go and say, yeah, there is some solid state components in the signal path and that makes your sound shit. That's bullshit. I give you a good example. If you are the early Ritchie Blackmore live in Japan, there is a range master. A range master is used, which is a transistor, solid state technology. And this is creating the best tone of all times. in Ritchie Blackmore's world. If we are talking about David Gilmour, Pink Floyd, I mean, of course they all play tube amps, and there's nothing wrong about tube amps, but they use solid state components in combination with it to make their best sounds. Brian May, and you name it, every great guitar tone, not every great, there are purists that just play an amp and a guitar and a cable, and that's one fantastic way of getting great tones. There's nothing wrong with that, but there is even a limit to tube amps sometimes where solid state components have an easier job to get you to the next level for a specific tone. And this is a matter of taste. And knowing that there are differences in tubes and solid state components and what they are doing in the circuitry, you can work with it and you can create whatever is needed to achieve the best tone. If you would need to have 3 real tubes, old school style, and there would be no way around it, I wouldn't compromise and I would design products like that. Done it. This is Triumph Mark II and Mark I, which I designed as well. So these devices are using 13 tubes. So there is not the discussion of how many tubes can be used. They are fully loaded with tubes, as many as you want. There was no limit. And this is also what you have to do when you create an original. You have to think about the whole thing with no compromise. Compromise is a bad advice. And now back to what I'm currently doing is Amp1. And as I always told you guys, I don't do many compromises, or I don't do compromises. I stop when I'm happy, and this is my Amp1. And next week, I will talk about the Amp-X, and that's the next in line, another step in my logical progression as an amp designer, coming from here with the same mindset that I always had. And this was the funny thing when I was watching the other guys with their YouTube videos on the stuff that I was designing and being part of the creation of these products, because it's kind of a mirror that showed me again, actually I've always been the same. I have never changed. My mindset has not changed. I do the same kind of things for many decades now, and I'm just digging deeper, widening up the horizon, and this is how it's even possible to get to an Amp1, or how it's even possible to get to an Amp-X. And next week you will get some Amp-X infos, and you will see, and you maybe I can explain a little bit how crazy that approach is, because this goes back 92, whatever, 20, 40 years, 30 years, whatever. 40 years. Fucking hell. And this already, as the guy from Aeon Electronics was mentioning, was way ahead of what was on the market back in the day. And here is another thing. When you do something that is great, you will be copied. And here are 2 copies of the Tubeman that showed up a year or 2 later. One by Mesa Boogie, the V-Twin. And actually, it's a great pedal. I have to say, look at the cosmetics. This was the pre-rectifier. So if they wouldn't have done that pedal, maybe the rectifier would look different today. And they have been using the 2 tubes, which we also had in the other Sound Machine wait a minute, I have it in the Hughes and Kettner product. So they came up with the idea kind of combining the Tubeman and the sound machine in like one device. Where is, let me see if I can find it. There's the red box. Oh, fuck, eh. Here. These are... So there's the Cream Machine, the Crunch Master. And by the way, this is the Power Amp, CF100. And then there came the other sound machines. And they have been using 2 tubes each. Okay. Another classic that I believe that I'm very proud of. If it wasn't me, it would not exist. And here's the story. We are talking about the Rotosphere, which is a Leslie simulator. And the Rotosphere is based on this Leslie we can see here, which is a real Leslie. No, this is the finger. That's me on this side, and that's Bernd Schneider I worked with back in the days. Yeah, sadly passed away. But this guy had a lot of passion, and we worked like there was no limit. We had passion. We were leaving the company 2 a.m. and not only one day, very, very often. And this is exactly the same spirit that I still have, what I'm doing lately with Julian in Blue Guitar. And if you don't have like a team with that kind of spirit that wants to go that extra mile, forget it. You will never get there. I mean, even if you have a very professional company with 10 whatever people, in the end, it is the passion and it is the commitment and it's the vision of a team that gets you there. And it's not a one-man show, because that's also something I learned. All the designers that are just a one-man show, they face a certain amount of limitations, which is by nature. And this is not to say that they are bad, but this is kind of, it's a thing that happens if you are a one-man show. Of course, there are exceptions. It's the same thing like musicians. You know, most musicians are very good at whatever, playing the guitar or the bass or the drums. This is why they choose that. And there are some crazy good people like Prince that play all the instruments and are fantastic singers, songwriters and dancers too. But these are the real exceptions in history. And when it comes to amp designers, it is only a few that have I don't think there is a Prince quality in amp designers. Not me. Don't put me there. I have my strengths and I have my weaknesses, but I would never be at the same level as such geniuses. They are real geniuses. I just do something with a lot of passion, with a clear vision, and that's that is driving me, and it has always been like that. So there is nothing, for me, it's nothing special. It's super logic. I just have this idea, and then I don't stop until I get it. And of course, I need people that are experts, and in certain things, I just know what I want, and I can get them so excited that I find people that take the challenge to work out the solution in the collaboration with me. And I couldn't do it myself, and they couldn't do it themselves. It needs to ping pong, and this is the way how to get to this next level. And therefore, you need a team. And this is what we had at Hughes & Kettner back in the days, yes, with me and Bernd Schneider. And this team is what we have with Blue Guitar today. And I believe some other companies have maybe also some teams, but yeah, I'm not... Anyway. And there are some very interesting people with a lot of vision and taste in the industry that I respect a lot, and that these people inspire me. This is why I love this industry, because there are people that are going to the next level, that create something new and exciting. Okay, let's talk about the other classic after the Tubeman. When the Tubeman did his thing, so to speak. Wait a minute, I switch off the Marshall. Okay, let's go back. I went. No, that's bullshit. I go in here, and this goes out here. Okay. So the next idea was to create something that was so different in a pedal. This was pre the pedal boom. We are talking 1990s, 1995. And there was the Ibanez Tube Screamer, and there were a few other pedals, but not like today. We have millions of pedals, and unfortunately, thousands of remakes of old pedals with different colors and a different frequency here and there, but nothing really new. But there are also cool new pedals. Don't get me wrong. But the relation of how many pedals we see today and of how many original designs are out there is sometimes, I don't know, 50 to 1. One design and 50 take on that one design with slightly different flavors. And I'm not saying that's not worth doing it, because that little difference in flavor can be the thing that makes you happy. And that's all worth doing. But back to the Rotosphere, my idea was, I had done a lot of session work, and in the studio, one of those tools that made me different from everybody else was that I knew what a Leslie can do, and I didn't invent that whole thing. No. This was just me being excited about Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, John McLaughlin, and some other people that have been using Leslies in the 60s. Leslie is that rotary cabinet that is used with a Hammond organ. And I just had my own rack system with a 19-inch Leslie simulator and a tube preamp, and that was something that I could take around, but it was like such a big box, into a studio and deliver a sound that most people didn't hear, and I knew what to do with it. So let's listen to Okay, so this is the Rotosphere, and we are listening to the whole thing in mono. I think we have a great clip of Mick Taylor and Daniel Steinhardt from That Pedal Show that I have seen the other day, where they have been talking about Leslie simulator pedals, and their conclusion is this is kind of still the best sounding pedal, but it's still not the real deal, but it's still the best sounding pedal. And it's having, you know, the AC power supply for the high plate voltage tube, and it's so big, and nobody would use it today, but it has the tone. Hey, let's watch that clip of that pedal show and see what the pedal experts, I mean, we are talking the pedal experts, have to say about their reaction on the Rotosphere.
What an awesome sound. Yeah.
I dig it.
That's the one.
Yeah, for me,
Yeah.
of all the simulators, if you're going to have one, have that one. They're impossible to find. They're impossible to power. Not impossible. They're very hard to find. They're very, very hard to power. They take up insane amounts of space on your pedal board. They're just the least practical thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But the sound.
It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
But the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So we have decided to this point, the problem with rotary speaker simulators is, number one, the digital ones have a latency issue.
Yep.
So using them wet dry is problematic.
Yep.
Number two, if you're using 2 amps in order to do the wet dry thing, the sound is coming from a single source.
Yeah.
Not from a stereo situation.
Mm-hmm.
Or indeed a situation that physically moves to create movement. So what we're going to do next is try to bridge the gap.
Just it's a Rotosphere, and that really does sound magnificent.
It does sound great, doesn't it?
It sounds incredible.
I would say it's
the best that you can do.
And it
I
is
think-
so much better in stereo,
So much better in stereo.
if you can be bothered.
Yes.
Is it enough better in stereo than it was in mono?
So the interesting thing with the stereo is you're getting the two different Leslie speakers doing their thing,
Yeah.
but the physical effect of being in the room
Yeah.
with that. Now, what's really interesting is the speaker isn't moving.
No.
There's a thing going around the speaker, and that is enough to give the effect that fills the room.
Yeah. So 30 years later, after this came out, people are still raving about the sound. And that's why they are sought after. If we look at the prices of a Rotosphere today, you pay at least the amount you have to pay when it was new. And well, it makes me super proud that people that I'm a big fan of were using the Rotosphere, including the one and only Jon Lord of Deep Purple. Okay? And all the guys that I admire, I mean, we are talking about Andy Powell of Wishbone Ash, who is, used the Rotosphere, and now he is even using Amp1, which is so cool. And by the way, you can see the Amp1 is plugged in, and the orange is there for nice cosmetics, which is not saying that the orange is not a great amp. It's just saying they prefer the Amp1s for their consistency and reliability. And as many players do these days. But just to name a few Rotosphere users that make me proud, I found an old Hughes and Kettner catalog here, and there is names like, we have the Rotosphere hardwired to Andy's Ragnar. We are talking about Andy Summers. No? Remy Jaffe playing it. Rotosphere is Bonamassa. Rotosphere is used by let's think about it. Jeff Beck, yeah, my hero Jeff Beck. Let's watch the Jeff Beck clip, because Jeff Beck, the one and only. Yeah, Jeff Beck, you know, how cool is that? We have a little clip on his complete pedalboard with the Rotosphere. Just watch that so you know what he had on his pedalboard.
Okay guys, let's have a look at Jeff's pedalboard from 2005. Jeff's big pedalboard is hidden behind the stage and is controlled by a tech. And it features a Peterson tuner, a Hughes and Kettner Rotosphere, a Boss line selector LS2, a Boss flanger BF2, a Maestro ring modulator, an EBS octabass, and it's powered by a Voodoo Lab pedal power. And also it has a Whirlwind AB switcher. On the stage, Jeff had an old Snarling Dogs Wino wah and a white box labelled H Gain. This is believed to be some kind of a booster. Carefully, you see it's missing all the knobs, and the same control knobs are on the white box instead. It's likely the wah was rehoused in that white box. In an interview for Vintage Guitar magazine, Jeff Beck's tech, called Steve Pryor, talks about Jeff's gear. For Beck's own shows, Pryor controlled an offstage rack that included such things as a Maestro ring modulator, a Mutron octave divider, and an old grey MXR power flanger. Pryor says, "I make my own Megami cables with Switchcraft jacks. That goes into a Snarling Dogs Super Brawl Wino wah, Kenny Segal is the man behind that. Next, it's into a Klon Centaur overdrive. Out of that and into a delay. In 2010, Jeff's tech Steve Breyer talked to ToneQuest magazine. He says, the guitar goes in high impedance and out through the first buffer low impedance, through all the pedals, and this makes them quieter and the switches operate much more quietly. When you're kicking signal into some of these old 70s effects, through a very long signal path of 40 feet and back again, you need to give it a little low impedance goosing. You saw the Snarling Dog wah, MXR flanger, Mutron octave divider and Maestro ring modulator, and he also uses the Hughes and Kettner Rotosphere Mark II, which is also rather noisy. I've done various things with those as well, like replacing the 12AX7 with a 12AU7, and it does significantly improve the signal to noise ratio, but then you've got to run it hotter and it's a trade-off. In 2013, Jeff went on tour with Brian Wilson. He had a smaller pedal board which stocked a Snarling Dog's wah, a Klon Centaur, a Hughes and Kettner Rotosphere, a Way Huge Aquapus and an MXR carbon copy. He also used a Lexicon reflex rack in the effects loop of the Vibra King.
Yeah, it makes me so proud when I know that my heroes play products that I created for myself and them. And there's tons more. I'm not sure. Somewhere I heard rumors about David Gilmour as well. Maybe it's true, maybe not. I don't know. There are Warren Haynes is another one. Bonamassa, etc. Okay. And here's Mason Marangella of Vertex, who is again somebody who's a big pedal expert because he designs pedals and he builds pedal boards. And I found a little snippet where he was raving about the Rotosphere.
Vibrato, the Boss VB2, I think is really great. The Wazacraft version is super close to the original. And maybe Rotary, man, this is a tough one. All right, so Rotary, Brian says he likes the H9, but I'll tell you the best one out there, and it's analog, is the Hughes and Kettner Rotosphere. Now, you really got to be committed space-wise to using this thing. I think it works on 12-volt AC at like 1 or 2 amps, so there's not a lot of power supplies that can handle it. You're going to have to like use a wall wart. But man, it sounds glorious. It was the Charlie Hunter sound for many years. If you guys are familiar with Charlie Hunter, he's like I think now he's at 7, but he was using 8 strings for a long time, and it's just like one of the most like soulful, kind of just groove-oriented players of all time. And he used a Hughes and Kettner, and that was a really great rotary pedal. And then I think another really good one that is analog as well is the DLS Rotosim.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, I go to a vintage guitar show in Los Angeles and I find somebody with a Rotosphere. And of course, how much is it? 550? Okay, US dollars. Yeah. And which is cool because it is still great value. Something that people love. And another funny example is our dear friend Manuel Bastian, who is a killer guitar player, also has his own studio, and he had a Rotosphere, maybe he still does, but the Rotosphere made him buy and collect real Leslies. We have a little clip from his studio with a real Leslie where he plays the Hammond organ. Yeah, so see where the whole thing comes from, just in case you didn't know where a Leslie comes from. in the chats I can see a few comments about is there an option how to improve the Rotosphere quality and especially the noise issue. The Rotosphere itself is using old school Beckett bridge delay type chips, and these are noisy and it's part of the sound, so this noise you have to live with. The only thing I can recommend is use as much drive as you can afford, and then if you have a pretty high signal, the noise is not so obvious. That's what I'm using. I'm putting the drive almost all the way up, or in my case now all the way up. And yeah. So I can give you a little insight in the Mark I version and the Mark II version. You maybe see there's the two LEDs that show you the speed of the different rotors. And the red one is the low frequency rotor and the green one is the high rotor. And it's so important that they have a different speed, because that's part of the magic of the Doppler effects and the different speeds happening at the same time, especially when you go from slow to fast or fast to slow, because this is it's a musical effect. Let me show you what happens. First, there's a difference in the Mark I version, because there are no extra little holes next to these LEDs, like on this one. Here I can adjust the top speed of the rotors. Let me show you. Okay, and the reason for that is when we brought out the Rotosphere, we had people complaining about, well, my Leslie has a different speed. The reason for that is fairly simple, because there was a belt that was driven by a motor that was connecting to the horn, and when the belts were worn out, they didn't have the connection, so they were slipping. And the speed up process was different, and the top speed also was sometimes different. And this is kind of a way of customizing it. In the original first version, these are just two fixed resistors that have been exchanged in the second version with trim ports. So no magic. If you need to have a different speed for yours, you can modify this. A technician could do that for you. Yeah. In my opinion, this was a good example of a classic. It took me years to convince Usen Kettner to do that, because they didn't know why do we need a Leslie? Leslie is for keyboard players. We are a guitar company. And I said, no, it's a special thing. And my point is, if you know exactly where your niche is, where you have something that nobody else is doing. Now there are some other pedals, but back then there was nothing. And of course not a pedal. and not a tube-driven pedal. I mean, up until today, there's nothing like that. This is why people still rave about it. But when you know exactly what you're doing, you get this into so many high-profile hands, because those high-profile players, they know what time it is, and they can smell how good that is, and they are playing it. And it doesn't get any better than Jeff Beck, Andy Summers, and Andy Powell, and them all. You know, they all have a Rotosphere at home, and because what else? If you want to be special, that's a special pedal, and if it's still special, it's the thing you must have, even 30 years later. Yeah, of course, that's also on my wish list for AmpX, but don't expect this to be soon. You know, we have other things coming up first. In my personal preference list of classics, it's the Replex, and that's already in the AmpX. If anyone has a pedal that sounds as good as a Replex that is smaller, let me know. I will still buy it. I bought 4 of them. I think I got one for free from back in the days in using Kettner, and the other ones I literally bought online myself, and some of them died. Here's another Replex. Just, you know how much Replex nerdy I am. I got 4 of those, and that's how good I believe they are for what I do. And again, there were some people like Brian May that had one sometime in his life, like Uli Jon Lord, who had one sometime in his life. For me personally, that's I need an amp first, and then I want this. But hey, that's me, that's my personal taste, and I love it. And, you know, since this pedal came out, I was never playing without it if I had enough space on my pedal board or if I had the opportunity. It became an important ingredient in my personal tone arsenal. But hey, we all have our favorites, and you also have to discover what to do with these, and it needs to suit your style. And of course, these are very, very, very special pedals. They deliver things not everybody is offering in that kind of specific sound character quality. And for me, these pedals have a sound quality that will never disappear. It is top, and it will always be top. You will have smarter solutions, more compact, but it does not really get any better than this. It gets different. Different might be better for you, but for me, there's nothing I would change on this tone-wise, and therefore these are still my references, and these references are based on the reference of an Echoplex, tube Echoplex with worn-out tape. That sounds like that, but this is so noisy and so hummy and so fragile that I would never use one of those. I just took the sound and we put it into this package, and now this sound from that package ends up in the Amp-X. And so this is my story going from one pedal into another pedal. Individual pedals, and then amp in a pedal, and now the Amp-X is everything in a pedal. And why pedal? You know, people think I'm crazy because a pedal amp, why don't you make a proper amp? When I came out with the Amp1, they wanted to have a head, looks like an amp, it's an amp. But for me, I think a head, and it's like, do I want to have a head just for the cosmetics so I feel like old school, which is cool. Nothing wrong about that. But in my life, it needs to be more practical. I'm traveling, and every gram and every, weight and the smaller the better, the lighter the better. And this is why we have a Nanocab Pro now. And that's Blue Guitar, that's me. Other companies do other products, and they are great. And maybe you like them even better, fair enough. But my thing is that kind of philosophy and that kind of spirit, which, as you can see, I have been doing all my life. Nothing has changed. I just continue doing the things that I have done, and I'm just going to the next level and the next level and the next level. And this is where we are at. By the way, there is a little clip of the Rotosphere on the Pedalicious YouTube channel that you should also check out. And there's other pedals as well. People forget about that channel. There's many great pedals of many great boutique pedal manufacturers that I demoed, of course, always with the Amp1. But it's about to get inspiration on specific pedals. Shall we look? Let's go ahead and see what I have done with the Rotosphere on that channel. Explains it. It was used by Jimi Hendrix, it was used by the Beatles, it was used by, you name them. Rotary Effects, well known from the Leslie rotating speaker cabinet. The Leslie cabinet was used by organ players, mainly the Hammond B3. It's famous to get this kind of swirly effect sound. And soon after the Hammond player discovered the cabinet, also the guitar players stole the idea to record some great sounding rhythm and lead guitars with it. It was used by Jimi Hendrix, it was used by the Beatles, it was used by, you name them. A lot of players, Stevie Ray Vaughan in the studio. And this effect, of course, in the original rotating speaker box was very huge. And the effect is created by a rotating horn, is driven by a motor and a belt, and then there is like a ball that rotates inside the speaker that produces the low frequencies. And the speed of both speaker, so to speak, can be changed from slow to fast. And that's the beauty of it. So you have a very alive sound. The sound on slow, the sound on fast, and of course anything in between. Let me show you. I designed the Rotosphere with Hughes and Kettner back in last century with my colleague Bernd Schneider, and we had a very nice original Leslie cabinet to compare. And it's still used by some of my heroes like Jeff Beck and Billy Gibbons. So let's listen to this one. That's slow. Slow fast, and now listen how it speeds up and slows down. And you can hear that the speed of the low rotor and the high rotor is different. So that's the beauty of this effect. Yep. So I was reading through the chat and I have seen a few questions. Okay, one question was, okay, Udo Huschka, can I modify the breaker switch on the Rotosphere Mark 1 to be permanent? Exactly, that's the point. So the Rotosphere Mark 1 has a momentary switch for breaker, which means you break the power of the motor that drives the rotor. And once you release your foot, it speeds up again. On the Mark II, it's a really a real switch, like not a, what is it? Not a momentary. It's a latching switch, and of course you can exchange that switch to such a switch. Here we also put an LED in there, so you know when there is the full stop that you are on full stop, because that can be kind of confusing, because then it stays in this position and you think something sounds weird, and therefore the LED is helpful. But yes, you can replace that momentary switch with a latching switch, and that's possible. We had the thing about the noise, which is not really possible because it's of the bucket bridge delay line. Frank M. Schmiedel, Lebensrocker. This evening I saw a Proton Rat. Never heard a word about Proco. I don't know. Proton Rat. This is the original good old Proco Rat, which is another classic. By the way, also Nuno Bettencourt was using these. Yep, I like them. That's why I have them. Would make a completely different episode now going into this, but I just wanted to show you that I know what a rat is, that I do have one, and it's my good old rat, and it's still, I think, the best rat I have seen. That's why I didn't buy any other. Okay, I find somebody says, I find Amp1 to be extremely middle sensitive tone wise. Okay, whatever I can interpret into these words is the mid control is very sensitive. Yes, it is. So 555 bass middle treble is, I would say, my reference sound that can be then used as a foundation and to be adjusted to your cabinet or your situation or your taste. If you go and just dial back the middle from 5 to 4, there's a lot happening. Anything lower than 4, I personally believe it's not healthy, because mids are needed. And then of course, the more mids I dial in, the more mid focus you get. And in my personal opinion, it's like when I dial in the mids, I get the PV sound. Of course, it's my I'm bashing a little bit on PV, because they had sometimes their amps had a very mid-focused sound. That means you don't have to have so much headroom and power for the low end, and you could get away with lower wattage and get still a loud, present, mid-focused sound screaming at you, being good to be heard, but not so pleasant to my personal taste. So, but I'm not saying this is bad. It's something that actually works, and therefore you can dial in anything from 5, which I kind of like, or 4 sometimes, even to 10. And of course, it all has to do with your speaker and your situation where you are playing the room. Nothing is written in stone. It's like, never put it there. But I do agree on, there's a lot happening on the mids on Amp1. So the mid control is very effective. So be careful and don't go too crazy with it. So that's my comment for this. Did you ever try a Keeley Eccos? I tried a lot of different echo pedals, and there are some great ones out there. My favorite Keeley is the Halo, of course, that Andy Timmons brought to the world, something that he didn't invent, but David Gilmour was using this kind of type of delay, and he put that in a pedal together with Keeley. Great thing. Again, something that I liked so much that I put it in the AmpX as well. Next week. Have you ever thought about a version for bassists? Nope. I give you the same explanation that I always give. It's called Blue Guitar. We focus on guitar players, not on bass guitar players. And bass should be, bass products should be designed by proper bass players and should be, a company should focus on something. Actually, in the past, with Jusen Kettner, I think maybe we can find it here. I designed bass amps as well, but not in this catalog. Was earlier. Let's see if it's in there, but I think this is again too late. If I can find. And there were a few bass amps actually that were not bad. I remember that I had hands on an Ampeg SVT, a good old tube SVT, and what was the Quantum was the name of the Jusen Kettner bass amps. Fuck, already forgot about it. And we tried to get that tone into a very different technology with solid state, but at least we could capture something of that in these amps, that tube warmth. But even Jusen Kettner discontinued bass amps. Why? Because it was always the third child in the family that nobody had time to take care of. So no bass things. On the AmpX there will be a few presets eventually, because it's a studio tool, but it's not designed to be a bass amp for playing live. Okay. Mick Rose, have you also been involved in designing Access VS250? Yes. There's a preset sound called Thomas Blug lead, of course. My story on this is pretty intense and maybe even funny. So when you look at the Jusen Kettner story, now we are talking Jusen Kettner background, but there's nothing wrong about it. So this was Bernd Schneider doing his thing. He was designing the A64, which was this programmable amp, which was unbelievable advanced technology. Looked like that. Okay? My first job at Jusen Kettner was to demonstrate this amp. And it was quite some experience because Bernd did a lot of things way ahead of its time. And some of the things were good and some of them were really bad. Let's give you the example of some good things. You had storage places, you could dial in tones, you could make presets back in whenever, early 90s or late 80s. I don't even remember exactly the date. And there was a delay built in, there was reverb built in, and there was a stereo chorus built in. To get a wider stereo image, he decided to have two 12-inch speakers, Celestians, but he was not facing them straight, so he was facing them angled in like, let's say 45 degrees this side and the other one 45 degrees this side. What you did is you put the amp behind of you and that speaker was going nowhere and the other speaker was going straight into the ears of the singer. And you were standing in front of the amp and everybody but you were hearing the guitar louder and pointier and more aggressive than you. So that was the thing. Of course, the stereo chorus sounded killer, but all the rest sounded shit, honestly, in my opinion. And this was my first job to demo this amp. And when I came back from the demo, I had a big discussion with Bernd Schneider back then. And the rest is I ended up next to him in the R&D department for 27 years. And of course we became big friends and fans and we went through everything together. And I have so great memories about what we worked and how hard it was, how hard I challenged him. The first thing I took to the company was my amp collection, my Vox AC30, my Marshalls, my Fender, and showed him the real deal. And with that, raising the bar on tone, we came up with the idea to make the next generation of this, which was called Performance. And the Performance, I don't know if it's in this book here at all. The Performance, no, it's not even in here, unfortunately. Yeah, so this is the thing. We worked for years. I think 1 or 2 years on the Performance, which was improving. Yeah, was improving the A64, and I came to the presentation and told the owners of the company, hey guys, I'm so sorry. We spent a year or whatever and a half or maybe 2 years, a lot of time, a lot of money. And I said, you know what, honestly, I would not release this product. It's not good enough. Oops. So the next thing I got was Hausverbot. You don't come here anymore. Which, of course, I do understand, because I was wasting all the money for no result, no commercial result. I was not happy. So I was kicked out for the moment, but of course I was not finished by then, because I came up with the solution, and the solution was the Access MIDI preamp and the VS250. Do it properly. So this was my concept of splitting the amp into two parts: a real tube power amp, which makes you feel like playing a real amp, and a fully controlled preamp with actually two tubes and the soundboard and all the switching and the programmability and the effects loop and everything, and even preamp loops for sound machines and whatnot, to have a real professionally working professional tool. Because I felt half a solution with a compromise is not what we should offer to serious guitar players. And the VS250 and the Access MIDI preamp was serious. Of course, that costs another year of R&D time, them paying me and Bernd and all that stuff. But that combination was a product that was used by many professional players back in the day, because it was the combination of a preamp and a power amp in one in a rack mountable size. There was a red fucking hell, I don't know. There is no pictures of it. Here we go. There is the Access MIDI preamp. Yeah. This was a show special. Here on top is the preamp, and then there is the power amp. The thing about the preamp, and the color here is, I think it was gold or silver or something, actually were black. This was just a show special. But this was a super professional rack system. And I had a rack system like this big with a quadraverb and a few other lexicon effects. And it was so powerful. And it was like 25% of what Steve Lukather and his Bradshaw system was. So this was, let's say, if you were not Steve Lukather, this was equally as good, but still handleable and affordable rack system that I designed. And this is the answer for Mick Rose. Okay. Is there other artist testing AmpX already? No, I'm not yet there, but it will be soon after NAMM. Yeah, okay. Ollie P says the Vibratone 110 rotating speaker. See Stevie Ray Vaughan. Yeah, that's another Leslie type of speaker. I nearly always play 555, Schärfentiefe says, with Mercury. Yeah, this is... and by the way, this setting here, 555 and the vintage channel, is what you get when you have a vintage Marshall just cranked. And on a vintage Marshall, you don't hear the tone settings when it's cranked and it's overdriven. So there is no filter past the saturation, past the overdrive, because it is happening in the power amp stage as well. So there is no filter after that. And that is what 555 on an amp1 sounds like. So if you dial in 555, you are in the vintage amp, power amp saturation sound territory. So what's going on? Nikos Politis. Hey Thomas, I want to upgrade the capacitor in my Strat and see that there are many differences in voltage. I found 250 volts, 304, 600, which is the proper value for the farad. Okay, wait a minute. You're talking two things at the same time. There is a voltage and there is the capacitance, which is farad. The voltage doesn't matter because such a guitar has no voltage. It's nearly under 1 volts from the pickups. So voltage doesn't matter, but so we are talking farads. And what in the Strat, what I'm using is 250 picofarads. 250 picofarads. Depending on the guitar, it can be slightly less, 180, which gives you a higher frequency, but less of that. Or you have a bigger value like 270 or 330 picofarads, but that can be shrill. Because the higher the value, the more treble you get when you roll down the tone, the volume on the guitar. So I would experiment with the values for your taste, and it depends on what you want and what your pickups and electronics in the guitar are like. But don't worry about the voltage. Voltage is not important here. Okay, blah 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 blah. Yeah, Wahlbruch, space-time delay, super. I'm saying there are great delays out there, but my point is like there is no other delay like the Replex out there, because it's what the real tube thing is doing. And yeah, if there's one, let me know, but I don't know of any in this kind of quality. I was also, here, Slow 78 Mo, where you also involved in the warp factor. Sure, love the pedal, like my tube factor, killer for recording through a cab sim. And the warp factor was a round pedal that was based on, I would say, a rectifier a little bit, like a very rich and dense overdrive circuitry, like a dual rectifier in a pedal style of. Not exactly, but this way, yeah, why not? Unfortunately, I don't have any of these anymore. Should get one used. Ken Sundberg, what's the story of the Switchblade amp? Well, the Switchblade amp was a tube amp that was made programmable, and therefore you could dial in tone, gain, and memorize it. That was the Switchblade. The Strat capacitor depends if you need it for treble bleed or tone control. Yes, very important, Giffy. Two types of capacitors. The tone capacitors, they are dampening the high frequencies, the treble, on the tone pots. Which means when you roll down the tone, you get rid of all the high end. And in opposite, and by the way, these go in parallel to ground. They ground the high frequencies with the potentiometer, and the treble bleed kind of bridges the input and output of the volume pot with a very small capacitors. We are talking about those picofarads, and the other ones we are talking nanofarads, which is way higher value for the tone, and this very little value is for the treble bleed on the volume. So please don't confuse these two things. Keep on playing. Last comment here. Thomas Creamback 65 close 112 or V30 for Mercury with Strat. What suits this comp better from my perspective? Okay, what was it? Creamback 65. Ah, fuck! It's so hard to explain. The Creamback I like. It's a bit brighter than the V30 from what I remember. I do have them over there. V30 is a thing you have to like. Most people like V30s. Keep on playing. You have to try for yourself. It takes 10 seconds. Make shreng, and you have the right decision. I personally don't go for any of those two speakers. Sorry, but they are two great speakers. I'm not saying they are not good, but they're not 100% my cup of tea. I like vintage 30s only when they are worn out and not too aggressive anymore. So yeah, Creamback 65. I think I have in the other room. And this was a little bit too bright, if I remember correct, for my taste. Ken Sundberg, yeah, I was part of designing the Switchblade amp, but this was again also a collaboration with Bernd Schneider. Bernd Schneider was the man for all the programmable amps, more or less. I did a little bit of sound design with those. It was not really my biggest thing. It was my thing to bring in the tube amps and the non-compromise aspects. And so it was a teamwork. Yeah. Okay. And the last comment here, Richard Bradley, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Are you gigging in Berlin in 25? I don't think so. Berlin, unfortunately, is on the other side of Germany. I'm in the southwest and Berlin is in the northeast. And it's and Berlin is such a hard place to play because there's so much competition. The only thing I do this year, I'm sure, is Hamburg. So sometime in June, I will probably be in Hamburg and play there. So check out on my website. I didn't put any of the new dates up there. Something I need to do as well. Okay, so this is the chat. Now something super important. Next week, AmpX. 2 weeks, NAMM. So this is a very, very big step this year. AQ on Mercury, not now. Sorry, too late. Next other episode. The thing now for this year, there's a couple of things. As I said, Nanocab Neo Pro, a Blue Mercury, and of course AmpX. Don't push me too much with AmpX because it's finished when it's finished, and it's so complex that it takes, of course, lots more time than expected. I'm now my own boss, so nobody has to kick me out of my own company. If somebody would do that, I would even understand it. But it is worth the wait. That's all I can say, because it's unbelievable. I mean, there's tons of modelers out there with hundreds of great features, and they do everything, but they do it as good as they can do it. It's probably great sounding and it's good for going direct, but for me, the old school tube guy, it doesn't feel the same. And this is what AmpX is doing. It's exactly the feel. It's unbelievable. I'm just blown away myself every time, and you get that. And I need to have the attention to detail, because with my years of experience, I know what can be done, and the time is now. And this is what we are doing. Every day we work on MX, and you will see it. You will see it. It will come. And it's nothing like any other product on the market. And it will take a long time, and people will do maybe things in the same direction. But honestly, Amp1 is out for 10 years. Is there any serious competition out there by now? Yes, sure. There's a Laney Lionheart 25 watts amplifier, or there's a Blackstar Amp1 with a copy of the power amp, but not the same way, with 4 times conversion, analog to digital, digital to analog, adding latency and all that stuff. Nothing is puristic, and therefore this is a timeless piece of equipment, and this is the same level that I want to approach on the Amp-X, and this is, well, we'll talk about this next week. Now I want to show you another important thing. Emanuel Knorr is from North Germany, and Emanuel is a killer guitar player, and he's also a killer metal guy. And we have plans for making a few streams together, and maybe having him as an extension, because, you know, I'm the old school guy with the puristic approach, but he is the fresh, young, well, 30 or something like that, guy that goes all in for the modern tones and for the modern approach. And I have done a little interview with him that I wanted to show you now. So watch him and see what time it is for the modern sounds and the modern playing styles. And we see each other next week live. Maybe from here, maybe from the R&D, as we are working every day, wherever there's the Amp-X. See you guys. Okay, enjoy. And enjoy the interview with Emanuel Knorr now. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, a real big pleasure to have Emanuel Knorr back at the Academy of Tone. Yeah, we had the pleasure to have him like a year or two back in Hamburg #1, from what I remember. So it's time for an update. We recently spoke a little bit about what happened in your life, and there were so many interesting aspects, from the metal world into a Mercury that sits behind of you. Yeah, there's a little light, and a lot of things beyond, and we have big plans. So, Emanuel, what is happening in your life recently? Maybe you should tell us.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas, for introducing me. And it's great to be back at your show. Just have good memories about the thing we did in Hamburg, and it's just an honor to be back here. Yeah, so what's happening in my life? It's kind of hard to explain because there's so many things happening. As you've mentioned before, I used to be the lead guitar player of the band Majesty. Majesty was a metal band based here in Germany, and we did. I mean, the band history reaches far beyond my time as a musician. So they started back in early 2000s when I was, in kindergarten, basically.
Yeah.
And I've been touring with them since 2015, so for the best part of 9 years, until we broke up in 2023. Very unfortunately. However, yeah, things always exactly things happen, right? That's life. Yeah, basically, a couple of new projects have been developing ever since. So one thing which was also always kind of a part of me was music as an academic. So I've kind of increased my activity in that kind of segment. And I'm working at the University of West London, which is a British university. They have an online program which is called AMS Online. And what we basically do is delivering bachelor and masters and even PhDs in music. So I do that for a lot right now. And then in terms of, well, musical projects, there was just so much stuff happening. So I've been focusing on Majesty for 8-9 years, and I've kind of been in this mindset of, this is my band. I got to work on that
Right.
stuff, which is a cool thing. And I'm not complaining here at all, but it's also refreshing to sometimes do new things. So basically, what I did after Majesty broke up is I was kind of open to anything that
Yeah.
may come up, in my surrounding, and
Yeah.
I've accepted a lot of different gigs. I'd even dare to say similar to what you do, because you do so many styles of music, right?
Yeah. What I was finding so interesting is when we had that long telephone call the other day, you mentioned that you discovered also a Mercury edition amplifier in, of course, another musical context. I mean, I know you as the totally dedicated metal guy that knows shred like nobody else, and that has the whole 9 yards in that kind of territory. And then suddenly you tell me, well, you discovered there is the traditional side as well. Maybe you can explain what happened on this for a sec.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of a funny story. So, I'm getting older. I got the beard now. I became a father. So all these things, I think part of becoming older, at least for me, was also to kind of widen your horizon a little bit in terms of music. And one thing that inspires me to do music is sound, right? I'm a guitar player. Guitar players are about testing different guitars, pedals, amps, and all of that. However, I had the habit of, just never changing a running system. So I've been playing this amp ever since I got it, for most occasions, and I'm super happy how it sounds. And I'm super lazy. Just set it up once, the settings work, and the rest, is things that I generally don't touch. However, now going back to 2023 when Majesty broke up, as I said, I was accepting all sorts of different gigs, from more or less local stuff, local parties and something like that, which were kind of jobs, get the rent paid, to also working with bigger artists, so who would be like in modern language, right, with more than a monthly listeners on Spotify and things like that. Well, that was not my main territory musically. It's kind of more pop and rap vibes, even something like ethnical music, things like that. I really much enjoyed that. So in the beginning it was kind of a thing, again, some kind of gig just to pay rent, but I started enjoying playing different styles. And I always had the Mercury here in my basement as well. So I was like, this amp, it's kind of meant to be the metal version, even though it can also do things outside of metal. Let's be honest. It's also, the roots, you can still get it out of the amp pretty easily. However, I thought I do have the Mercury here, so why not using that? I started messing around with that and discovered a couple of things that were kind of untypical for me. So the amp inspired me to play different, to use pedals, to basically get full analog, which is something I've never done in my life before. I had pedals when I was a teenager, but ever since kind of the plugins and stuff like that developed, I just became very lazy with that. And this amp just made me play around with new types of sounds and tones that I wouldn't dare to play around with before. So right now I must admit that 80%, I'd say, of my time playing, I'm currently using the Mercury, and not only being a hired gun sometimes playing, on a stage with a rapper or whatever, but also playing metal. And that's the funny thing about that. Yeah.
And for me, this is when we talked, I could feel that you have a lot of different perspectives now, and I can sync in so many aspects there. And I find it very, very exciting for me to have somebody like you that is metal like I can never be, because I'm too old for that, and I do a different kind of field. But on the other hand, I know your passion. I know about your perfection. I know, you want to warm up, you want to do it right, you want to have the right tone, you want to have the best tone in the mix. You do recordings. You have all these aspects, from like being the hired gun, doing local gigs, from the very small things up to the total serious. I do a new production with a maximum quality. Only the best is the best for you, and I can kind of very easily synchronize there. And when we had that telephone call, we had so many ideas of topics we could talk about. And what I liked so much about it is that you do have a different approach, because you do have a different background. And so your priorities kind of came from, being younger, having the digital revolution as a starting point. I mean, when I was young, there was literally no digital stuff. I remember when I had an Atari 1040 to make MIDI notes, and this was not even digital audio.
Yeah.
Today, everything is digital. I have digital earpods. I have a computer in front of me. Everything is digital, and it gives me the whole universe of options. But me knowing the traditional old days that I lived in, I could see the progressions in technology. And when you started later. And so you had a different focus on things. And now kind of moving around a little bit more, like that narrow-minded kid that grows up today, that only knows a plug-in, and that's everything they know. I found so much common ground in our discussions. So I find this very refreshing, and this comes even.
I mean, it's super interesting what you're saying. You said something. You said you're too old for metal. Right? I don't think there's something like being too old for metal, but I get what you mean by that, right? You have your identity as a player, as a person, right? So, and let me turn the other way. I was too young for. I mean, I look quite old, but I'm 28 years of age. But I felt being too young for getting into analog stuff. But suddenly, a couple of years later, like look behind me, right? I mean, there's this kind of this equation where sometimes I'm that guy, where I just want to be quick with things, and get things done, but that took out a little bit of the kind of the playfulness of making music, right? It's kind of a difficult thing, and it can be even a threatened thing to your passion when you do it as a job, right? Sometimes you forget why you started, which is not just getting things done quickly with a certain level of quality, but which is being passionate about it, right? Playing around with things, enjoying yourself while you're doing it, and all of that. And that kind of, I had this issue a couple of years back, especially in COVID, right? Where all of this like live playing, all of that. Suddenly, it was a huge part of my life, and suddenly it was away from one day to another. And I mean, don't want to get don't want to digress here. What I'm trying to say is that getting back into the analog world kind of also was very good for my development as a musician, because I now remember why I started doing this thing. Maybe it was just having fun, playing around with things, enjoying yourself in the process. And I mean, with the Mercury, what I just really like about that is that it's kind of a funny thing. I only use the clean channel right now. It's like it has so much headroom, and it's just a very, very good basement for using pedals. And that is something which I never did before. I mean, I had pedals like a tube screamer to boost, to boost the lead channel of any light. Exactly, yeah, kind of that classical thing. But I'll start playing around with that and just enjoy myself in the process of doing that. I mean, I could play a couple of notes here with my Mercury. It's currently connected. And the bass sound. Let me show you that. So basically, it's on the clean channel, as I just told you, and it sounds just like this, you know. Sorry. Yeah, that's what it sounds like, right? So it's nothing, right? It's just a standard clean sound.
Right.
I mean, it does have that what I just call headroom, which is a great platform to play around with it. So I'm having a pedal here, which is made by a company called Analog Alien. It's called the Rumbles, which is kind of a Marshall JCM 800 kind of Marshall in the box style pedal. And when I turn it on, it sounds like this. Right? So this gives it like this classic rock, kind of classic rock kind of feel,
Right.
which is a sound that I wasn't playing with too much in the beginning. Right? It was just going straight to high gain. But I find if you have this kind of low gain or medium gain bass, that this is usually something that you can work with very good. You can boost it, make it, giving it a little more sustain. It can sound super tight in the mix and things like that. Especially when you're playing, you know, I mean, sometimes high gain, that's true. I didn't believe that when I was younger, but it kind of kills some of your dynamic. It kills some of your nuances in your playing. So yeah. Exactly, right? So it's kind of hard if you have a lot of gain and wah-wah and things like that, it's kind of hard to get things right. But if you're practicing like this, you know, it's kind of can hear the nuances and stuff like that. So it makes me a better player. This is my practicing sound. When I practice like this with this sound. You know, so this is not even close to high gain, not even close to what I used to play before. But I find that this is a kind of a great sound to get better with my technique. This is a great sound also to practice like phrasing, you know, like, which is something that I kind of discovered a couple of years ago. Like if you have a melody like, there's so many ways to play that. Right, so it's kind of the same bunch of notes, but you can play it in so many different ways. And this is kind of the sound that inspires me to play around with these things. I wouldn't do that if I was playing high gain right now. And then I have a pedal what's called the Tube Dreamer by Jam. It's kind of a tube streamer kind of pedal. And when I turn that on, I mean, you can hear the hiss right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, it's getting closer to what I used to play, and this is I'm mostly about lead guitar, so I practice a lot of soloing stuff, and right, and this is kind of the tone that I would use. Well, this kind of stuff, which I usually do. So the base of that sound, again, is this.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's such a great platform to mess around with all these different things, and that's something which for someone like me, being under 30 right now, was a kind of a new experience, and re-inspired me.
Right, and if we would like to compare now the pedal and the Mercury and the traditional sounds versus the Iridium, which sits right next to you, do you have this hooked up? Just to have a quick comparison, what you would do with the Iridium?
Yeah, I would need to do a couple of clicks in between.
Okay, go ahead. But I mean, I can comment on what you just said a little bit while you do the setup change. So, guys, for me, do you know what to change? Can you do the change for the
yeah,
Iridium?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. I can switch to that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, guys, the point is, I also had a phase in my life where I discovered that me going back to the traditional non-master volume Marshalls with so much dynamic was crucial to develop my tone. And what I learned from my plexis, which we can see here and there and everywhere, is I had to learn how to hit the note the right way to express and what I really mean. That was my challenge in my life, and that finally gave me an even better tone as a player on any sound, on higher gain sounds, on lower gain sounds, on whatever. Because once you get into the interaction of dynamic, and you can really have a wider range of dynamic, you have the responsibility to fill that wider range with useful information by your expression. And that's making you the better tone player. So, my creed.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in it. I mean, there's also different challenges in high game playing, right? Getting muting right, and it's not. I would never say it's easier to play with high gain, but it's a different challenge. It's very different.
Absolutely, I have totally difficulties when I have fake metal in my hands, how to get the optimal dampening on the strings, because with such a lot of amount of gain, you have to have the full precision and the least of surrounding noise. Otherwise, metal is not happening. It's just noise. And
I mean, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I have highest respect for, especially those fast rhythm chunky bits. On the playing solo is an easy thing for me, because that's where I'm coming from. But to have the fast things and muting the higher strings on a high gain sound when doing the chuck riffs, that's sometimes, I know in theory how to do it, but I only have a few moments where I succeed in, this is what I want. But hey, I admit I'm not the expert there. This is what you are doing.
I mean, that's what I also realized is a lot of guitar players I work with who don't do metal, they have a kind of a different hand position. So when I grab the guitar, the first thing my hand goes is right here at the bridge, right? It's kind of feeling a safe space here. Right, so it's working all the time. While if you have a funk player, it's completely different. Yeah, but okay. Here I am with the Iridium right now. So this is with no pedals, right? If I'm using that amp, I usually just use the channels from the amp. I'm mostly in the modern channel because it has kind of a little more this kind of scoop character. You can bring up all the mids that you want if you want, but the general character of it sounds more scooped, a little more like it's more it's like smoother presence, less bite, less Marshall-like, more kind of this smooth high gain sound, which I really like. So this is it without any words. Right, which is a great lead sound. The gain is quite high; it's actually at 7 or 8. But I mostly use guitars with medium output. So, I mean, our friend Andreas Kloppman, right? He's also doing most of my pickups, and I got rid of this habit of having a high gain amp and a high gain pickup and a high gain pedal, right? I like medium output. It sounds just tighter in the mix. So this is what I typically use for rhythm guitar. And then if I turn this magic button here in the middle, which you know too well because you designed it, right? I'm getting this extra bit of sustain. Which I don't find. I mean, for shred, it's okay. But generally, when I play sustained, no. The string action is too low here. You enjoy the sustain when I'm playing sustained notes. I mean, this is kind of if I would play a guitar solo now, this would be my go-to. That's where I'm home.
Cool.
Yeah. That's the Iridium. I can switch back to the Mercury quick to see how that sounds in comparison.
Okay.
One thing which is important to note is that now while I do this comparison, I'm having the same impulse response. So I mean, that usually this influences the sound a lot, right?
A lot. Yeah.
So if I'm now switching back here, and doing the trick, then we're back at Mercury, and then with all the pedals activate it. Right? I think there's some of the identity still audible in both amps, but it has a different touch. It has like the mid-range, right? It's the mids are a little bit more alive. I mean, this is made on purpose here, right? Because usually metal guitar players don't like mid, but it's a different vibe, and it still sounds good, and it's just a different thing which inspires me so much. So I'm happy to have both of the amps.
And for me, it's so good that we can kind of connect from both sides, because I have my roots are in last century and kind of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then I'm fading out a little bit. I'm not saying I'm not interested anymore. I still am interested, but it's maybe there's a phase in your life that really defines your personality. And for me, it would be a wrong thing. It would feel wrong to be, trying to be the hippest metal guy. Why? Because I'm not. And I honestly love what I'm doing. And you have your passion for your music and for your gear. And so I found it very complimentary.
So true.
Yeah. And
I mean, I want to quote Martin Miller at this point. I mean, you know him as well, and anyone who picks up a guitar in Germany knows him. When I was a little younger, like in the beginning of my 20s, I was a guitarist and I was working there for Ibanez, who I also endorse. And Martin was giving his clinic there. And I was kind of still on my way to finding my identity as a player. And I thought about learning jazz licks and all of that, because I knew that these guys like Sean Lane, and they had a jazzy kind of background and things like that. And then Martin told me, he said, I mean, there's one thing which I think is overrated in the 21st century, and this is being diverse as a player. Just play what you want, right? So you don't have to do the jazz licks if someone does it on Instagram and it sounds cool and it's making a trend, right? And this is applicable for you, for your generation, for you, and also for mine. And the beauty of it is, I listen to other styles of music, I listen to other players nowadays, and I just take what I want from them.
Exactly. So, and make it your own, because whatever connects to you makes sense in your life, and that's a inspiration. And the more you are decisive about things, that is something that I do like, and this is something that I don't like, creates your own style. And it always has been like that. And of course, in today's social media world, with so many different channels, you go on Instagram and you see 5 shredders in 10 seconds, and they all have the hottest licks. I remember when I was a teenager, there was John McLaughlin, Al Di Meola as the shredders of the day back then. And then Yngwie. And of course, I was a little bit inspired. But on the other hand, I also draw a line where I said, you know what? I like this part, and I try to learn that part, and I forget about the rest. And now I have created my own style just by telling people, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. And here, just one more thing, because we only have a couple of minutes left. Emanuel will do an Academy of Tone focused on his background, on his life. We don't have a title yet. Maybe it's Academy of Tone Metal or something. But as we can see, it will be very open. And I'm so happy to have a co-host that we can look into the different worlds from different angles, and we can really learn from each other. And I know that when we had the phone call, we had so many great topics, from recording, from sounds, how to create sounds, what is important in your world, what is important in my world, and this is this is the thing I'm really, really looking forward to. In February, I don't know if we have scheduled a date or whatever, but then we will have you as the host of a special Academy of Tone, and I'm so excited to see what you can do on that channel with all these topics.
Yeah, so the cat is out of the bag, right? We had a phone call in December, and Thomas was looking for someone who is fluent in English and can play metal guitar and likes amp-1s from the guitar. I was like, you're talking to the right guy right here.
Yeah, I was asking you about if you know somebody, and you immediately said you're talking about me.
True, yeah. So I'm super excited. I mean, I started making my studio blue, so it fits blue guitar.
Yeah.
I'm currently setting up everything, so it will look a little different next month here. I'm still optimizing, but I'm super excited to do my version of Academy of Tone. We'll obviously talk a little bit more about metal guitar and metal guitar tones. And I think these two guys, the Amp1, Iridium, and the Mercury, both of them hold a lot of potential for this kind of music. And I'm super excited to bring some fresh winds to the Blue Guitar family, not only as an artist, but also as the host of the show. We'll talk about very interesting topics, from maybe low tunings, producing, all these things that usually, let's say, the modern generation of guitar player,
need to know about.
Exactly. And I'm super happy to get going with it for next month.
So guys, Emanuel Knorr will be on the channel more often. Thanks, Emanuel. Okay.
Thanks for having me, Thomas. See you soon. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.